Thank you so much, Jim, Juan, Reverend Brooks. It's an interesting. You mentioned losing an election, and as all of you know, I spent 3 years in the United States Congress, and they were some of the most consequential 3 years in our lifetimes. And what we accomplished was great, and it's very much at risk in the coming election. The two big issues are going to be the health care reform, and they're going to be the Ryan budget. These are, if there are two things that we're going to be arguing about for the next 83 days, that's it. And Jim did an excellent job of explaining why it's absolutely necessary for the health care, the president's health care, Obamacare, to be preserved. And I'll just add one number to that, which is that every year in the United States, 40,000 people die for lack of health insurance. And that does not happen, incidentally, in Massachusetts, where Romney Care is actually working quite well. And so that it's just a very important point on this, is that this is not some untested wild experiment. This is something that is known to work and works well in that one state where it's been signed into law by a guy who now disavows it. But the thing I wanted to talk about, since Jim did such a good job with healthcare, is the Ryan budget. And this is just a mixture of dozens and dozens of things that will hurt people. And if you look at my opponent, Judy Biggert, and you look at what the things she's voted for the 13 years she's been in Congress, people have been very badly hurt by her votes for every year she's been in Congress. And that is, as much as anything, what this is about. But if you look at the Ryan budget, I'll just pick out one provision of the Ryan budget. This is the elimination of the child tax credit. This one thing, the cuts in the child tax credit are going to force the families of 2 million children out of the middle class and into poverty. So, this is an anti-middle class provision. The Republicans try to say, well, it's all about poor people. No, this is something that will strike at the heart of struggling middle class people and force them and their children into poverty. And then when they arrive in poverty, they will find that Judy Biggert, my opponent, has voted against Head Start, has voted against food stamps, has voted against Medicaid, and everything that middle-class Americans depend as their safety net for the times that their life gets rough and they fall out of the middle class. And so that is one of the many, many things battles that have to be fought and won. And Jim is, I always think of him as a whip, a majority whip. And when we reclaim control, he once again will be the majority whip, which is sort of an ugly and powerful word. And he referred to himself as number 3 in Congress. But in fact, when it gets tight, when you say, okay, everyone has a bright idea of what can we actually pass, and then it comes time to counting noses and knocking heads and making sure that these things actually pass, he is not number 3, he's number 1, because he's the guy that they go to make sure that what we're talking about will actually pass. And in my 3 years in Congress, we lost very few votes. When Jim said, okay, this is something that can happen, it happened. And so I was very proud of his leadership. And I did learn a tremendous amount in those evenings drinking at the Democratic Club. And he has more wonderful stories of the way Congress really works, and the way it should work, and the way it isn't working now. And this is another very important thing, because one of the sickest things about what's happening is the way that Washington is right now not about the interests of people. It's all about these wealthy special interests that seem to have our government by its throat. And that has to change. And the main way to change that is by electing people that care about people instead of caring about corporations and wealthy special interests.